So I'm really okay. Yeah, it looks like the microphone's working. So in this episode of reading from the Parinoma method cover to cover, we are going to read about the hub identities. And this might be a long one, and if it starts to go a little too long, I'm going to cut it into two sections, but this section is the name. Now that I write title cards for each of these sections, I realize like when the names of the sections sound really boring. This one, this one is, this one's a banger, and so yeah. So this one's really so as we're so let's see how to talk about this. This is okay. So the thing about the seventh hub is it is about this kind of cognitive aspect of sort of like contextualizing things and being able to consciously reclaim things. And so it's both inward and outward. So it's like also sort of, this kind of connection to, something this greater connection that is, extends past the like physical reality of who we are. But with the hubs, the individual hubs, each of them contain a facet of our identity. So actually, I'm going to plug this in. I think that hopefully this won't. So in this section, I'm going to read through it. I'm going to try to get through the whole thing today, but we'll see what happens. We're looking at each of the facets. And so one of the things to consider, and I don't know if I'm going to spoiler it. It feels like something I'm about to spoiler, but one of the things about the facets is it's kind of like a call to reconcile, possibly like an over identification with one of the hubs and like a consideration for diversification. So, actually, I'm not going to use examples yet. I'm going to see if they come up because without having talked about what the specific identities are, it's kind of just like blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to start reading here. This is page 251. This is a really good one to have the book for, to read along, to look at. And then when we get to chapter 11, which actually comes next, holy cow, it's kind of wild to be, getting to part 3. There'll be more of the looking at the hubs together. And so this ties back in with chapter 2. So once again, we're talking about the infinite loop where we're starting to come back to the idea of how all the hubs are actually working together, which is introduced in the second chapter as a kind of a framing for every individual hub chapter that's in part 2. But then it starts to, in chapter 10, and then throughout the rest of the book, we're looking at all the hubs together back again. So yeah, okay. Follow along if you can. Okay, so hub identities. So each hub contains components of our identity, and most folks tend to identify with one or two of them. Diversifying our identity across all our hubs has benefits similar to diversifying a financial portfolio. Our overall growth is more likely, and we're better protected from the vicissitudes of life. Each of our hubs has a natural inclination to burn brightly, gently, or somewhere in between. When they are relatively balanced and without adaptation, our hubs are uniquely expressed, dynamic, and responsive. Our adaptations are often regarded as personality traits and considered part of our identity, similar to having limited belief systems about ourselves. It's kind of a weird dropping into that sentence. So it's like, I'm going to read that again. So when the hubs are relatively balanced and without adaptation, our hubs are uniquely expressed, dynamic, and responsive with adaptations. our adaptations are often regarded as personality traits and considered part of our identity, similar to having limiting belief systems about ourselves. Yeah. And that's just pointing back to defensiveness. So say like an adaptation of defensiveness to protect yourself, like when you're coming up in the world, that you're like, I'm just defensive. Like the idea that that's like now that is a hardwired aspect of yourself. And that tightens the tangle, and it rationalizes the defensiveness, and it sort of like heightens its importance and makes it harder to see that it's something that can be often incredibly maladaptive for supporting your life. So, and getting and like living a life in a way that is optimized for your highest good. So, however, over identifying with any aspect of ourselves can cause rigidity and can interfere with growth when we mistake and even idealize, for example, stubbornness or fixation as conviction. Like I'm reading, I don't know if it's if it's the writing or if I'm reading it weird because I'm like, um, it's like one note is on this is that when I was reading the manuscript one last time before I sent it out, I remember being kind of like scared because I started reading it and it was all like I was reading it kind of like where it was like, but like I was like improperly emphasizing words and stuff. So it was making me like it was I was like, this is really badly written because it was like it really felt like I was worried. I was like, oh my gosh, have I been, under some kind of delusion? But it's just like one of those things. I think, is that normal? I mean, like, do you relate to that it's like sometimes like when you're reading, it's just like really it's like sort of like wonky, I guess, like where it's like emphasizing words or not or like flipping out or switching out a word that actually like changes the whole notion. So anyway, so below is an overview of the hub identities. Notice which ones feel more important to you than others. Everybody will have a slightly different take on which aspects of identity are the most important, revealing one's own inclinations. Yeah, I mean, one thing I think that's like I'm going to point out right out in front here is that one thing also about the hub that we tend to over-identify with, it feels like it's true as far as our notion of like what life is all about. Like that's also an aspect of like an identity. And is there going to be more in the no? So I'm going to actually there isn't anything here about this. So one of the reasons that okay, so the first hub is the physical identity. So I'm going to give an example and I'm going to talk about this. So the first hub, physical identity, I am what I have, I am my body. So the condition of home, health, possessions, and reliable income. Sorry, that's my housekeeper leaf blowing in front of my door over there. I don't know if you heard it. Okay, the condition of our home, health, possessions, and reliable income form this layer of our identity. And like any foundation, everything built on it relies on its stability. This is the hub of self-preservation. And this is also a fold back on like recalling the hub, reconciling it even further. So this is the hub of self-preservation. And the antidote for self-preservation is becoming a state of constant hypervigilance is trust in oneself, trust in one's ability to be capable of taking care of oneself. And this also folds into a notion where a lot of, in a lot of these hubs where you see the impact of adaptations is that people are still hoping for others to be able to save them in them. And it's heartbreaking. this reconciliation that it's like there isn't anyone this coming to save you is like a vestige of the desire to be like picked up and cared for in a way that wasn't met. It's hard. It's very hard. Or to be seen, to have needs met, to be tended to. So the idea, like putting the pressure, but like not saying anything and then being upset that people don't do things because they're just not considerate, versus saying like, here, this is the stuff that matters to me. Then when they don't do it, that's another story. But anyway, going back to this, the first hub is physical identity. I am what I have. I am my body. I'm going to bring in a couple more before I start talking about the notion of diversification. So the second hub is emotional identity. So first hub was physical identity. I am what I have. I am my body. And it's the hub of self-preservation. Antidote, trust. Second hub is emotional identity. I am what I feel. I am what I want. Even I am what I desire. So how we feel and what we want are important parts of our identity, but over-identification makes us believe our feelings are inflexible facts, either turning want into irrefutable need or flooding us with emotion so we can't think clearly. That's a really important part. This can cause tunnel vision, loss of perspective, which puts us out of sync with others. This is developmentally appropriate for babies. Their feelings and wants are fused with their identity, and tantrums can erupt when the feelings and needs of others take precedence over their own. So this is the hub of self-gratification. And so, like, an important note here is that this is like often stigmatized, that to like want things, to desire, like that, like the hunger of desire, being like having like sort of expressions of like being like insatiable and like fully immersed in like pleasure and desire, like that's like, oh that's selfish, like that's where the stigma like comes in. But the fact that it's like there's a place to really unapologetically want what you want, and then the balance in this comes from being able to contextualize that within like a larger world. But like but one of the things that happens is that the lack of this identity leaves people just not knowing what they want. So it's like a complete abandonment of it for fear, like it's like, yeah, I don't know. What do you want? I don't know. Like that thing of being like, I know it would feel good right now. I'd like to do this. Like being able to really feel into like, what's the next move that would feel good? It's like, I'd like to go take a walk. I'd like to go, this is the food. I'd love to have this food right now. I'd love to like talk to this person right now. And even if you don't get it, it's like there really is something about not being, and I think that some of the, maybe part of the thing is that it's like having been disappointed wanting. So it's the protection of being like, yeah, I don't want anything. So that could be another adaptation in the second hub, is like protecting from want by just like stopping wanting. That's pretty good. The other thing is I am what I feel, which is this thing where it lacks nuance in terms of like, so being able to understand that like how we feel and what we want are part of who we are. But when it becomes over identified with, it can become rigid. When it becomes over identified with, it can be that I feel this way. And then as the feelings change, like a holding on to it. Like there's one of the things I've noticed, like, I don't know if you've noticed this, is that there's a thing about emotions, like getting emotional and getting kind of like unhinged about things as being like a sign that you're sort of loyal. Like it's like, oh wow, you just like went off, like, or you matched my feelings, like you became enmeshed with me, you're loyal. right? So that's not great. That's required. So there's that. All right. And this is the hub of self-gratification, joy, pleasure, sex, food, whatever you like, guilt-free. Yeah. I mean, I guess the kind of thing is it's like if it's not, the thing about like crossing into like the harm of other people or invading other people's desires, right? It's probably part of the kind of the thing here. Okay, third hub, the individual identity. The individual identity, and I am what I do. So career, achievement, and goals are central to the identity of this hub. It's the work we do and its relationship to our sense of purpose, growth, and development, and how it aligns with our contribution and purpose in the world. In this facet of identity, our career, full-time parenting, or whatever work fills our days is central to our sense of self. Our level of responsibility, our title, and awareness of whether these represent our values are central considerations for this hub. Over-identification with work is a common dominant identity in which the search for life's purpose orients almost entirely around career, sometimes causing us to overlook the dimensions of self in the other hub. This is the hub of self-direction. Very common in my life, my world, that this is a very big like identifier hub. Now, now we're going to talk about diversification. Without the second hub, without representation of the identity of what you truly desire, not socially prescribed things, like it's just like what are the things, and by this is a sense, this is the feeling. What are the things that make you feel like alive? This isn't like I want a Lamborghini bullshit. Like this is like these are the things that I connect to, that when I'm doing them, I feel enlivened and connected, and like I kind I have this like feeling of this is what life is about, is to be in nature, to be with the people I love, to be reading, to be like like whatever it is. So it's like that sensibility of like that kind of like aliveness. The thing is, without that, and it's really common that a third hub identity with work suppresses a second hub of emotions, where people work very hard and are able to stay incredibly disciplined by suppressing the emotional pain that comes from forgoing things that are fun to do, the things that drive us forward. So it's not that's, this is nuanced and this is dynamic. And so the point I would say is that there's a time possibly to be like corralling and making concessions and sacrifices, but that ultimately that connection to joy, pleasure, comfort is not cut or like diminished greatly. Okay, next. And this is the hub of self-direction. I'm a huge third hub identifier, by the way. So self-identifying as a third hubber. And everyone's going to have, like to a certain extent, a different distribution here. So the fourth hub is social identity. I am my relationships. I am my connections. So family, culture, and professional, religious, and other social groups and affiliations are central to the identity of this hub. The people in our lives and our relationships with them define it. A husband, a mother, a son, a colleague, a friend refer to our relationships with people. When indicating who we are by belonging or not belonging with them, this facet of identity can include the community of people in the company we work for, our alma mater, or where we grew up. The primary caution for this identity is how much our identity becomes the roles we play with others. So in some cases, over-identification in this hub can create attachment to a specific dynamic within a relationship. And when the person or people in the relationship change, we can feel lost. So this is the hub of self-acceptance. So, so for some people, so one example here is, you have, people who retire, and because their identity is what they do, and it is so like deeply grafted into their professional identity, that the loss of their professional identity creates a sort of existential despair. To have given so much to a career, to given so much of who you are and your identity, to have surrendered a strong connection to your desire, to even maybe have surrendered a strong connection to your health, and even your relationships, um, to come out of the other end of, in retirement and not feel connected to yourself in these really particular ways, can be really devastating for people. So it's an example, for people who are identified in their relationships. You can have people who are parents who are absolutely like find themselves without any meaning or sense of direction once their children become young adults and begin their own lives, and that they should be having their own life. The fantasy being like, I'll live next to you and I'll watch your kids. It's like, yeah, that's over. Like, that's over. It's like, and that's a really hard thing. So the self-acceptance, which is the connection in the fourth hub, that ability to express love and care and be connected to people. I mean, even one of the things I've found too is that in the fourth hub with connection, my relationships with people at work have taken on this quality. So yeah, if anything, I think I've cared sort of equally, if not more, about the people and the connection when it comes to my professional career. So the loss, when I leave a company, that feeling of sadness is very here. I'll be sad for a little while. Okay, fifth hub, creative identity. I am my word. I am what I create and express. So what we say, write, and create form the identity of this hub. If I say I'm writing a book, I become a writer. When we commit to marriage, there are vows that change us into a husband or wife. We sign our name when we commit to starting a new job, buying a house, or writing a letter expressing our innermost thoughts and feelings. We sign our name when we commit to starting a new job, buying a house, or this is like that. I think that's like, it should be like, or in writing a letter expressing our innermost thoughts and feelings. But when we read letters or journal entries from earlier times in our lives, our words express who we were at a point in time when we made a commitment. This identity and the commitments we make evolve and change. This is the hub of self-expression. I would even add this is the hub of authentic self-expression, because there's a whole thing about self-expression that is in the service of other hubs. To belong, to stay safe, to avoid scrutiny, like that. Like the fifth hub gets co-opted very often to serve the sort of the unresolved or the adaptations of the lower four. the first four rather. I don't even like lower. But yeah, I mean, each of these, like this is another example of something that's like would be really good for discussion, because it's like, I mean, I'm not like, when I'm reading this, I'm like, this is sort of a notion on the map, on the, it's not like a complete, it's not like complete, it's just like a pointing to. So the sixth hub, the symbolic identity. I am what I see. I am my ideas. The identity of this hub, our vision of how we see others in the world and what we believe is possible. Okay, I'm going to read that again. The identity of this hub is our vision of how we see ourselves in the world and what we believe is possible. The aspirations for who we want to be in the world, often connected to archetypes, are expressed in our outward appearance, that is, our image, how we dress, style our hair, and even how we decorate our home expresses the identity of inner vision expressed as outer appearance. We can be inspired by people we see in our own lives and in the surrounding culture, and can feel connected to how they're expressing themselves. Myths, archetypes, and metaphors are found and connected within this hub. Expression and aspiration transcend words and connect us to a larger shared experience. We use our image to signal to the world who we are and where we wish to belong. This is the hub of self-reflection. Yeah. I don't think I have much more to say on that. This kind of is what it is. Okay, the seventh hub, transcendent identity. I am part of something bigger than myself. So it's the hub we're in right now. So we are on a small blue dot in a massive, majestic cosmos so enormous that it defies comprehension. This hub extends into a spiritual life if we choose to have one. When we remain open to learning, we can always find deeper levels of understanding. Again, to know anything with unwavering certainty blocks new knowledge. We can become attached to something we learn, having forgotten that it was once something we didn't know, and so resist the continuous unfolding of revelation. Although this is the hub that connects us to worldly knowledge, the ability to remain open and receptive requires that we release over-identification with the idea of our intelligence, trading it for inquiry and wonder. Yes. When there's identification with this hub, we experience ourselves as intelligent and wise and are often certain of what we know. But to over identify with this hub is to interfere with its ability to assimilate and process new insights and deeper layers of information. We can know for certain that we're looking at a rock, but deeper exploration contemplates its origin, composition, and relationship with its environment. This is the hub of inquiry and transcendence. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you are all of these things. You are all these things. And one thing that I would point to as it relates to my own experience and my own practice is that the hub that is the most comfortable to identify with holds the temptation of like making a deeper investment in it. So with that said, so for me, it was the third to second hub. So from a second hub, like my emotional capacity, my emotional literacy, expanding that, which was the place I just didn't want. Like, first of all, I didn't understand because I didn't understand. But then to go into it and to begin to expand it, it was like, oh, this is it. This is the thing I'm trying to solve for. Like, because keeping on doubling down on career, like I need to solve my career. I need to solve my career. If I solve my career, everything's solved. It was just because it was what I understood to want to like expand upon. And so when I began the process of expanding in the surrounding hubs, which I would say second hub and fourth hub, that's that's a unfolding of a liberation. It's like that's a key. That's like sort of a doorway or an opening, is to look at the hub that just makes the least amount of sense. It's like that looks like a weakness. that looks like something you probably don't want to do. My greatest strength is tied to this one being weak. Okay, so I'm going to finish my coffee, and thank you for watching. If you made it this far, I'd love to hear what you think. I would love to hear what you think about this. We are officially done with basics for the seventh hub, which means we are done with basics forever in this cycle of reading. We have reached the end, and we're going to move into the last theme section. So, which will begin with meaning and belief systems next time on page 253. So we're getting there. We're making our moves. And and if you're just kind of coming along now, it's whatever. It's all fine. It's still there's still whatever. Yeah. Go. Okay. So thank you for watching. And let's see. Yeah, so if any comments, there haven't been any comments lately, but it's fine. I still stand by. If you write one, I'll respond to it. If you do, I am getting comments. So I will say I'm getting messages on the Parinama method on Instagram. So I just want to reiterate that if there's something that if you don't have my direct contact information, and there's something that you want to share with me or ask me that you don't want to put in a public comment, you can direct message me at the Parinama method on Instagram. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.